Welcome to Curious Joel, a show about curiosity taking us deeper into the topics of people's passion and interesting conversation. I'm your host, Joel Circo. Our guest today is John Aufhammer. How are you doing today, John?
I'm doing great. I'm pretty excited today.
Excited in general or about the podcast?
Both, actually.
Both?
I've never been on a podcast before,
Well,
so this is fun for me.
Welcome to podcasting.
And excited to share the things that I care about with you.
Okay. So speaking of that, how would you describe your passion and what you do?
When I think about what my passion is,
Mm-hmm.
I have to go back to how I think I'm made, how I'm created, what
Okay.
I am good at. And I sometimes say, I'm really not good at anything except loving people.
Okay.
Which ties right in with what we'll talk about today, which is the fact that I really like people.
Mm-hmm.
I say that's a passion of mine, which means most of my life I have done things that relate to and connect with people.
Okay.
And in other words, I'm a relationship guy.
Right. So your official job title, what is that?
My job title is Camp Ambassador.
Okay.
Which really means I'm connecting with people that come to the camp, people that are interested in the camp,
Uh-huh.
and I build relationships with people
Okay.
as an ambassador might, in the truest sense of the word.
Right. So you also could be considered a stonemason, building bridges.
Yes. Okay, good. That's good. Yeah.
Okay.
Figuratively speaking.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So you're all about people and like the interpersonal relationships and business relationships and all that.
Yes, very much so. And I'm so glad that I've had the opportunity to be here at the camp and to be able to do the things that I think I'm kind of crafted to do,
Right.
Personality-wise.
How old were you when you realized that this is who you are?
Boy, that's a really good question. I started out in sales right out of college.
Okay. What kind of sales?
First of all, I kind of fell into it a little bit.
Okay.
I worked for a large computer company.
Uh-huh.
At the time, I wasn't involved in computers, but I was working part-time during college at this company, and it seemed like a very natural progression for me. And it ended up being a wonderful long career. I was with this company for 33 years.
Okay.
And always in sales of some kind or another, but a lot of the time was in purely relationship building type of sales.
Right.
Not so much new business sales, but managing relationships that existed between the customers and the company I worked for.
Right. Okay. That's really cool. So then that's where you like realize.
So, as I would say, so age-wise, I was in my mid-20s.
Okay. And in that job, like where did it click? Like this isn't just a job. This is what I want to do. Because there's a certain point where like it's just a job, and then there's a certain point where like this is a career for that 33 years you said.
Yeah.
So there's this point between 0 and 33 where you're like, this is what I want to be doing.
Well, let me think about that for a second, because there were parts of the job. Any job has good, bad, and ugly.
Sure, right.
But in this case, when I started to realize that I really enjoyed talking to people,
Mm-hmm.
and enjoyed learning about their business. So there were times when the most fun I was having was to spend time with this potential or current customer and learn about their business, ask them lots of questions, get tours of their facility, whether it's a manufacturing company or just a tax agency or whatever it might be. I had all kinds of customers.
Right.
And I had a lot of fun getting to know the people. If I can just share a quick story about some fun customers that I had.
This is all your space.
I had, for a number of years, the U.S. Marine Corps as a customer.
No kidding.
In El Toro and Camp Pendleton, and really had a great time meeting people that were amazing young men and women and older men and women that were leaders in the Marine Corps. I had both the air wing, where I would sit at the end of the runway and watch the F4s take off after right over my car.
Oh, that's cool.
I got a tour of a helicopter once. I got a traffic ticket on Camp Pendleton once. They had no mercy on me. So it was a great. That was probably one of the most fun customers that I had.
Right.
And I made a lot of money selling to them.
Right.
And
I mean,
enjoyed that process. So
I've heard from a few different industries that military contracts of any sort, like anytime you can, like, yes, the military is buying it. It's, I think it has partially to do because like trying to change anything in the military takes a while. Like, so like the administrative side of things, like we're gonna switch to this new, whatever takes forever to like. But we already have that.
Another part of when I started to really, this was several years in, when I started to deal with companies that were buying our equipment, adding their software to it, and reselling it. So they're called value-added remarketers.
Okay.
And I really enjoyed that part of the job because I was connecting with them in an area that caused them to be successful. Our products were excellent and outstanding. And they would add their software to it and then sell it. So one of my customers sold our product with their software to credit unions all over the country.
Okay.
And that was a very fun and interesting relationship that I had from the president of that company all the way down to some of the administrative people. So again, an opportunity to make connections with people, which I really enjoyed.
Okay.
And still do today. That's why I love working at the camp.
Yeah, I mean that's you still have the same job. I'm trying not to jump ahead of myself, but I'm going to forgive myself later. So, have you been in sales? I use that term loosely. Basically, straight out of college.
Yes.
Or did you ever like differ into something else?
I worked here at the camp for a while, and then took some time off. And during that time, I was still in a relationship job. I worked at Glacier National Park, Montana for 2 summers driving a tour bus. And every day I got 17 new guests in the park sitting in my bus. The bus was made in 1938. It was an old bus. Rebuilt it a little bit. And so in that case, it was building a relationship with the guests, telling them about the beauty of Glacier National Park every day, and giving them an enjoyable experience, not just pointing things out, but building a relationship with them, even in that short amount of time from 3 hours to 8 hours. So other than being in a sales position, which my camp ambassador job, I describe sometimes as an outside sales job, which I love doing. Mm-hmm. So my time at Glacier National Park for 2 summers, when I wasn't working at the camp, kind of between my camp experiences, was a fantastic, I like to say, with all due respect for my current job, the best job I ever had in my life. And I actually did that for 4 summers, 2 as an adult and 2 in college.
Okay.
In Glacier National Park, driving the red buses.
That sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was amazing.
I've heard a lot of good things from people that either used to be or are tour bus guides. They like, that's not a job that you do if you don't like it.
It was a blast.
Yeah. Okay. So I mean, your path differs from a lot of people's in the fact that like one of my typical questions that I'm trying to like get past them are like, okay, when did it turn into like a career? But yours, like, it was kind of simultaneously molded into the same thing.
Maybe a little family history might be helpful in that as well.
So that would go more into the question of like, where did this come from?
Perfect. That's exactly where I was going to go, because I grew up in a family. My father owned an insurance agency.
Okay.
And so we lived in a house. The 3 boys, myself being one of them, and our sister, we grew up in a house where we heard about business all the time, because that's what my father did. He owned a business, and an insurance business, and a lot of that was sales.
Yeah.
So we got experience hearing about it and experiencing it from his viewpoint. And interestingly enough, all 3 of us sons went into sales of one kind or another. And my sister was more of a detail person and was an accountant. So all of us ended up in sales of one kind or another, kind of following in our father's footsteps.
Interesting.
So my family of origin, I think, had a lot of influence on my career and moving forward. The other part of that is the company I work for, my older brother was already working there. And
Gotcha.
so that kind of drew me in there as well.
Sure.
So it's a combination of family and my ability to perform a job while I was in college, kind of a living resume. And they saw what I did, and I was able to continue on right after I graduated.
Okay. So that's the business side.
Right.
But there's only a certain extent that you can teach relationship. Like caring about people.
Yeah.
I mean, even for me, and I have to be careful how I say this, but for me, because we were talking about, it's like, wow, that sounds a lot like me. Well, but not quite. I care about people's brains. I care about motivation and stuff like that. You just care about the person as a whole, and just like, even if it has nothing to do with the sale, you just get to know people.
I've talked to, the answer is yes to that. I've talked to other people at the camp, one of the leaders of our camp at one time, and he used to say that he really didn't like, he found it hard to greet and meet brand new people.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of my most favorite things to do in the world.
Yeah.
Is to meet somebody new. For instance, when I have the opportunity to give a tour here at the camp to someone that's not familiar with the camp, that is, to me, a throwback to what I did on the buses in Montana, which is getting to know the people, showing them a place I know and love, and sharing the passion for Christian camping with them.
Yeah.
And that's one of my very favorite things to do. I kind of have to hold myself back sometimes because I can be a little obnoxious, maybe.
I can imagine, and that's a compliment. I can imagine the having to like just pull in the reins.
I don't have to meet everyone. I don't have to meet everyone.
Yeah.
But for instance, just as an example, just this last weekend at church, there was a new family that was there. I'm drawn to that. I'm not.
Almost like a moth to a flame, just like
kind of.
Just like, oops, I guess I'm over here now.
I can't help myself. I saw where they sat, and I made a beeline to them after church to just get to know them a little bit, make them feel welcome.
Yeah.
And not to do too much 20 questions, but how'd you find about us, and why are you here, and that kind of stuff. So I very much enjoy being interested in other people.
Yeah, and that's really cool. And so we almost talked about where that came from, but I don't feel like I got a direct answer of where does that, like, caring for somebody else, because sales is one thing.
Yes.
And you can be a really great salesman without caring a thing about the person.
Exactly right.
So, and your family might have something to do with it, but you didn't actually talk about where the caring about people came from.
Oh, Joel, that's a really insightful question. And I need to think about that a little bit, but I believe that it is a bent in the way God has created me.
Okay.
There's a bit of back to the family, there's a bit of family commonality there. Okay. My Aufhammer family, pretty much all of us are like that.
Interesting. Okay.
So it was modeled by my mother and father, who have since passed away, and then certainly experienced that in my job situation. My siblings, I could tell you story after story after story, particularly of my brothers, where they are interested people. They're interested in others. Yeah. And so I've seen that modeled by my siblings. Yeah. And that's the bent that I come from.
So you're almost quasi-genetically.
Yeah. I think there's some to that, but also there's nurture versus environment and all
nurture
that
versus nature.
Right. Yeah. That I'm clearly impacted by. Yeah. But I think actually it's just how God's made me. That's because fair. It's been something that isn't new to me.
It didn't happen at some point. You didn't grow into it. It was just there.
Even even in high school and college,
Yeah.
I was in a fraternity in college and very engaged with the men, other guys in the group.
Mhm.
So I see myself. That's why I kind of say sometimes to people, I really can't do anything. I just love people, and that obviously has a lot of avenues to it.
Right.
I'm not. I think about some of our friends and colleagues that we're familiar with here at the camp that I just couldn't do what they do.
Yeah.
I think
You're not a particularly tactilely skilled person.
Exactly.
You're not a technically inclined person. You're not a administratively minded person. Your strength is with people and connections.
And one of the and you might already know this, Joel, that there's two sides to every coin.
Yes.
And there's a side of the coin where being a relationship type person is a really positive thing.
Mm-hmm.
The other side of that coin, which has some negative ramifications, is being a people pleaser.
Yeah.
And being a people pleaser isn't always the right thing to do, because I have to question my motive sometimes. Why am I being interested in a person for the right reasons?
Right.
Or am I trying to manipulate them?
Yeah.
And I've done that before. And so I kind of have to be careful about
Yeah.
what is my motivation for my interest in other people and my relationship skills.
Well, and I think that two different thoughts. One is that's something I recently was learning more in depth about. I was listening to a seminar from a psychologist. He's professor of psychology, and he was talking about like personality, like the different personality quizzes and stuff like that. And I think the one he recommends, and I vaguely heard of this before, but it's DISC assessment. A lot of different companies use like different names for them, of like lion versus like this and that and the other thing, or the different colors. But the core of all of those is the DISC assessment, and the DISC assessment like lays out different types of people that, at least the one he showed us, was in an argument. What type of argumenting do you do, or negotiating do you do?
Interesting. Yeah.
And there's the decision makers, the decisive ones that just go in and do it. But the other problem with that is, if you're the decision maker that here's the answer, go.
Yep.
You're not thinking about other people in that moment. You're thinking at a pure logical. You're not thinking about the relationship. And then the other person that thinks more about the relationship is not necessarily like the bigger aspect is not necessarily going to be the fastest person at making a decision, and is often going to feel bad about whatever outcome it is, because they understand that each person is losing a little bit. And like just going on about like each aspect has a positive and a negative, and I'm like I kind of know that. So
true.
And it's one of those things like I often tell people, like, too much of a good thing is always a bad thing.
Well,
and here's the thing: is like someone's like, well, but not everything, that doesn't apply to everything. Is like, well, like what? It's like, well, they'll give you an example. I'm like, okay, but where's too much of that? Yeah. Now, I'm not saying there is a point where there's too much of everything, but if there is too much, it is a bad thing. And so, like, you're talking about the people pleasing is something that comes through that, and like even understanding people, that's something I deal with. Is like I understand people's brains. That's my whole life has been trying to understand how people think. What that turns into sometimes is I'm sitting there having a conversation going like, wait, did I do that on purpose? Am I making them say this thing because I understand this is how, like,
fascinating,
that manipulation? I get worried about, like, am I trying to get that outcome because of me, or is that I'm trying to, like, that's the best outcome for them? And I have to sit there and like, shoot, wait, hold on. Well, think back through this.
Let me share another aspect of that. Again, the two sides of the coin, or as you say, something going too far.
Yeah.
When I was working for this large company, for several years, I was a first line manager with employees under me, and other salespeople under me. And I found that I wasn't able to get the task part of the job done as efficiently because I was too focused on the relationship side of things.
Right.
And I was out of balance relative to trying to work with, be with, talk to, energize, be an encourager to people, in contrast to getting the job done. And I had a specific job, which is, John, your team is supposed to do these 5 things and sell these items.
Right.
And I didn't necessarily excel at that, but I
Right.
did excel at the people side. Too much so. So in your example of carrying something too far,
Mm-hmm.
I carried my interest for people too far.
Right.
It didn't overall harm me in the long run, but I actually stepped out of that management position back into a customer relationship position.
Right.
So I learned that my best
That's
role,
not your strength is
exactly
doing tasks. Yeah.
correct.
Yeah. And I think that's something that a lot of people, I mean, there's no fast way to learn that.
Right. Well said.
Like,
Yeah.
there's no fast way
I
to
had to go
like,
through that.
you know, and I'm learning that with my day job of just like the administrative side of things. Like, my mom is fantastic at administrative side of paperwork and
Yep.
writing stuff up, and I'm sitting there going like, I have to force myself to sit down at the computer and go like, okay, I need to send this email.
A colleague that I work with today in the office can multitask better than almost anybody I know.
Mm-hmm.
And she is able to, even while I'm talking to her, even though it looks like she's not paying attention to me, she's accomplishing the task that we were talking about, and by the time I'm done with the sentence, it's done.
Yeah.
And she hasn't missed one aspect of my conversation with her.
Yeah.
And I'm not a multitasker. I'm a people person.
Yeah, and you know, and like learning that. I mean, it sounds like for you learned that pretty early on in life, and like are able to like double down on like, I'm not good with this, but I am good at this, and so I'm going to learn how to do this better and focus on it.
Yep,
that's really cool. Trying to read my own writing. There we go. So. I was trying to read it as 2 different words, and it's one. It's ambassador. So you briefly talked about like what an ambassador is. What does it look like on a daily basis?
When I'm ambassadoring.
Yes.
Ambassadoring.
Yes, that.
Well, it can be some of my favorite times are when I'm up here at camp when groups are here, because I get to connect with them, talk to them, find out how they're doing. See if there are things that I can help them with. See if there are things that are going right or wrong that maybe I need to have someone help them with.
Right.
So that's an experience I love doing while I'm up here at camp. I'm not up here at camp all the time because I live off the hill.
Yeah.
But that's something I really enjoy doing. I enjoy following up with those same groups afterwards. So connecting with them while they're here, and even if I'm not here, connecting with them afterwards, finding out how the experience was.
Mm-hmm.
What we can learn from it, how we can serve them better, always trying to encourage them that we want to learn how to do our job to serve them better so they will come back.
Right.
I don't know if that's manipulating or not, but that's salesmanship essentially.
Yeah.
To tell them we want them to come back, and we will do our very best to serve them the way they would like to be served.
Yeah. Sorry, I was listening, but also contemplating philosophically, isn't sales manipulative at its base?
Well, no, I disagree with you.
Okay, I'm not. I wasn't saying that. That was a question in my head.
It is a question.
So I'm curious to hear your response to that.
It depends on the salesman, the salesperson. Excuse me. Yes, you and I both run into salespeople that are totally manipulative.
Right.
The goal of a salesman in many ways, or camp ambassador in many ways, is education. And telling them about a situation that can improve their life, their experience, their ministry, their job.
Okay.
So for instance, when I worked for this computer company, it wasn't manipulation. It was telling them how the products that we had, the hardware and the software that we had, could make their business more productive and profitable.
Okay.
Now, some might say that's manipulative, but that's educational.
Okay.
To create a situation where they can see, yeah, if I was to change my business in this way and use your solutions, that could have a positive impact on my bottom line.
Uh-huh. So the reason I asked this, and I was hoping that you'd give that answer, because you talked about how your ambassadoring is giving them the opportunity to help improve the camps so that we can better serve them, is education.
Yes, exactly right.
So you answered your own question. Is it manipulative? No. If your purpose is educating them and helping them understand why we're asking these questions, isn't just so that we can get better for everybody else. It's we want to better be able to serve you because you've seen what we can do so far, and we can continue to improve on that.
The side benefit is that when we listen to our groups, our leaders, and we pay attention to what they are suggesting, it does have a positive impact on the entire camp and all the groups.
Yes, I mean, but when you sell a product, you also get the side benefit of getting money.
Yep, exactly.
But that goes back to, your focus is their education.
Yeah.
Like, you want them to learn, and like I've had to do this a few things of like, well, if that's what you want, that this is not the camp for you.
And I've said that before.
Yeah.
I've done that before.
Yeah,
where
it's like
we hope and pray that you find just the right spot for you.
And like if you, through your education of this is what we provide, and I've also done tours here, and like there's been times where like they're asking about this and that, and like we're not a hotel. Right. We don't have.
This is who we are.
Yes, this is who we are, and if this is not the right camp, I'm not going to try and sell them on. If like they want this hotel experience or this giant resort experience, it's like, sorry, we don't have a live band that plays in the dining hall every day. We don't have daily bingo, whatever it is. Like, this isn't it.
In my follow-up with groups, there have been enough instances where they have said to me, kind of what you just said you share with people initially, that's not who we are. We can't serve you that way.
Right.
And consequently, we're not the best camp for you.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe here's some suggestions for you, other camps that you could connect with that may be able to provide you with just the experience you're looking for.
Yeah. And further ease your conscience. If that is your response afterwards, it's 100% not manipulative.
That's true.
The salesman that is trying to get you to buy the product will tell you that there's no other product out there.
Yeah.
We are it.
Yeah.
You have to go with us.
So in answer to your question, which was, could sales be manipulative? It can be, but my style and what you're describing with your experience as well, when you're giving a tour, for instance, that's education.
Right.
That's a sales position.
Yeah.
And it's not manipulative. It's really educating.
Yeah. It was that was a philosophical thought that crossed my mind of like, well,
it was cool that you connected with that. That was nice. I like that.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of why I do this whole thing.
Yeah. Well, Joel, I have to also say, as you've done multiple podcasts and the way in which you engage with the guest, I'm thinking about all the things you've learned about all kinds of different businesses, people, experiences. So this isn't about me now. I'm kind of turning around on you and saying that what a cool experience you're having talking to all kinds of different people.
Yeah, I mean, I thoroughly enjoy learning, and like I tell people all the time, and I'm sure my listeners are sick and tired of hearing me say, like, I have an insatiable curiosity. Like,
that's the name of your podcast.
Yes, that's the name. That took a long time to find the one that wasn't already taken, because there's a lot of shows about curiosity, and I've checked out a few of them, and I just feel like a lot of them skim the surface of certain things, and like someone says something interesting, I'm like, he just said they live in Japan, and you're just gonna.
Where's the next question? Ask the next question.
Yeah, and that's something that like I try very hard to do with this. Is like, okay, hold on, just throw the book out the window. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Hand on face, leaning on hand. Continue.
Yeah.
So like, and that's because it's just my natural curiosity. That's what drives me, and that's why I said my style is a little different than yours, because yours is just the person. Just, I love you for who you are, and that's it. Mine's going like, okay, wait, but how does that work? And why this and why that? And I'm asking like mechanical and like propulsionary questions.
Well, isn't it a joy how we are each one of us, you, me, and others,
Uh-huh.
are made so uniquely?
Yes, and that's something else that I've touched on before on this show of just like that's something else that I like is that I could interview probably 30 different ambassador salesmen
Yeah, yeah.
and have 30 different interviews.
Very
completely.
much so. Very much so.
And that's something that I appreciate, and it also drives my curiosity because like I've talked to a few different people that kind of had overlapping topics, but they have a different perspective and they have a different answer. And for me, that is something that is eternally intriguing because your drive for people is even as a job is what's best for them.
Yeah.
That's what you care about.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you care about them as a person, not as a client. Your thing is, well, sorry, I can't help you anymore. You should go see Bob over in such and such.
Which, when I was in sales, wasn't always a very good answer to my manager when I said, "Well, I just told him that we can't help him. Go someplace." It's like, what? You keep pushing.
The thing about that, and I know this from the user side of things, is when somebody I really hope nobody listens to this and uses this as a tactic because I would feel terrible about that. But like when someone says, "Here's other options. This isn't what we need for this. You don't need our product." That means that I'm going to remember that company.
Yep.
And then when I come back, I'm like, wait, didn't they say they have that?
Well said.
I'm going to come back to them because
well said.
That builds better brand loyalty than nothing else can do this.
Yep. I can't think of any specific instance, but I know I've had that happen to me.
I'm sure. I mean, like I said, like I've had that experience of like, well, we just don't have what you need, because that part of that for me is the honesty.
Yeah.
Like if a salesman can be honest with me and go like, no, I just can't do that, versus, oh no, this can do anything and everything. This you need potatoes. It can make French fries out of potatoes.
There's manipulation that you're talking about.
It's like, well, but I don't need the hype. I need the truth, and that's something like I get people often like companies will ask for surveys and like asking like, well, what do you want in a commercial? I'm like, I want facts.
Yeah.
I don't want the feel good like, look at them, they're playing on a beach. Ignore all the side effects of this pill. It's like, no, I need to know the side effects. And when a salesman's honest with me, or say a salesperson's honest with me, straightforward, and like, this is what it does. And like I talked to somebody that worked for Intel, and they worked at they worked for a store that sold technology. Sold technology. They sold laptops, and so he worked in an area that had Intel products and non-Intel products. Mm-hmm. And I was very surprised because he was upfront with me, like, I sell Intel products, I sell that chip. But he was able to tell me, like, this is where that other company excels.
Yeah.
So when it comes to that, they're going to be a better product for you. If that's what you're doing, you need to go with them. And I was like,
well, back to what you said, honesty.
Yeah, and again, when I need to upgrade my laptop, I have the money for that because the laptops are expensive, especially for what I do. Like, I'm going to be going back to that guy and be like, hey, you deserve the sale because of what you did. And so, like, that's an important thing, like, you know. And again, that educational purpose, like, I learned a lot in that. Like, we talked for I think an hour because it was just really cool. He was an interesting guy, knew a lot of stuff, had been in the industry for ages, and just knew everything. And I talked with him, and I'm like, I can't afford this computer right now. I'd love to buy it, but I can't afford it right now.
Come back.
And it's like, yeah, I'm gonna be trying to find him. So I had a question here that I think you've mostly answered, but I'm curious if you have any other insights into it, because I know that a lot of people, just observing your presence on camp, like, when you come up to someone and say hi, most people don't like, oh, that's a creepy guy that just came up and said hi. Like, whoa, back off. Like, I know there's some people that if they tried to do what you do would not have the same results. So what do you think makes yourself so approachable? Or what's the inverse of that?
I'm going to say a couple things that might sound self-deprecating.
Okay.
As I've told people before when they're trying to find me in a restaurant, I'm short, bald, and gray. So there's nothing really physically about me that would make someone
Intimidated or
well, that's true.
scared.
Yeah. So hopefully that is a positive for me from the standpoint of connecting with people.
Mhm.
But it's just the way I approach people, shaking their hand, saying hi, really in the context of camp or the church experience I described last Sunday, expressing interest in them and what brought them here. So getting interested in them quickly,
Okay.
which allows them to know that I'm not here to talk about myself and sell the camp right now. I just want to know about them. So it gets back to, I think the following phrase fits for me.
Okay.
An interested person is interesting. And when I'm interested in them, they then reciprocate in kind.
Do you
it's a personality thing also.
Yeah, I do you think that's that people can sense your genuine spirit?
I'd like to think so. That's a thanks for putting it that way. I'd like to think so, Joel. But
well, so I bring that up because when you're talking about an interested person is an interesting person, and that sounds similar, but idealistically different than. There's a book that I'm going to butcher the title, but it's basically how to make friends and
influence people.
Yeah, I think that's it. Where it talks about like, oh, well, if you ask them about things that they like, but that comes from a disingenuous perspective. If you're like, oh, I'm going to ask you questions about yourself until you feel comfortable enough asking me so I can talk about myself. And that's the thing is, you're not talking about like, we'll just talk to them until they understand that you actually care. It's you actually care. You're genuinely interested. And once you are genuinely interested, then the natural thing for them is to reciprocate that.
Yeah.
And so that, like I said, it's similar, but I find it fundamentally different.
Now you're going to make me really self-conscious, Joel, when I talk to people. Just kidding. Just kidding. No, it's as you use the word genuine, and maybe the way I approach people, I do come off as genuine to them. That I'm not trying to.
You're not coming in at an angle.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'm glad I asked the question now. I almost didn't. All right, now on to a few of my more standard questions that if you've listened to pretty much any other episode, you probably heard. Actually, recently I had two new questions. And I'll ask them at the same time. What is a skill you were surprised you needed versus skills that someone else might not think? They might be the same thing, but like if someone else were to try and get into this industry, what are some skills that they might need that they might not be thinking of?
Wow, that's a fascinating question. Well, I talked a lot about relationship skills. But in sales, there's a lot more to it than just glad handing and saying hello to people.
Right.
You need to know how to do some of the administrative side of things. So that's some skills. And I'm thinking back to my sales days, computer sales days. There was a lot of technical stuff that I ended up doing and learning how to do, how to configure an advanced computer.
Right.
What? Could I learn to do that? Well, I had to. I had to learn which part goes where and how many of these you added. And so there was some technical aspect of it that I needed to learn. I didn't need to be a systems engineer, but I needed to have a good level of product knowledge.
Right.
So product knowledge probably is one of the things that would be important. My experience here at camp, at Ottawa Pines Camp, is I've learned a lot about what the camp does, what the product is essentially that we sell, which is
the entire experience.
The experience.
Yeah.
But there are certain things that I don't do, and I'm happy not to do them. For instance, I tell people when they ask me, so how much does it cost to stay here? I say, well, you know what? They don't trust me with the numbers. So that's my way of avoiding that.
I tell them it's above my pay grade.
Oh, same idea. Same idea.
It's like, I don't know.
Same idea. So we, Joel, you and I make the right decision, which is direct them to the office.
Right.
And so could I learn that? Maybe, but there's so many details to that.
Right. There's a lot that goes
I
into
need to be
it.
sitting in front of our computer system to actually figure that out.
Yeah.
So best to say, but from a product standpoint, having relationship skills is one thing. If I was to tell someone to come in and do what I'm doing, you got to spend time at the camp. You need to walk around the camp. You need to learn where everything is. You need to know the product, and you need to experience the product with our guests, because then you learn what they see.
Yeah.
So product knowledge is really important.
Yeah.
How to support that product knowledge with technology. We use some tools here for keeping track of people. So that's a technology. It's a software product that we use that is important to know.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's very useful because, like, a lot of people, that's something else that gets on my nerves when, like, salesmen don't know the product. They can't be honest.
Worst.
They can't be honest if they're like, yeah, it probably does.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll give you these two different questions that are two different sides of the coin, and that is, what was easier than you expected, and what was harder than you expected? And this sometimes the same question, sometimes different, is what was your favorite versus least favorite part?
And again, an appropriate question. My favorite part I've talked about before, connecting with individuals in person.
Mm-hmm.
The hardest thing for me to do is to do it over the phone. I'd rather go see them than try and do it over the phone. Mm-hmm. But because of the geography involved with where our groups come from, I can't go see them as a follow-up.
Right.
And the discipline of getting on the phone and following up, talking to them on the phone, that's the hardest thing for me. Sometimes that phone, this cell phone right here that I hold in my hand, weighs a ton. It's hard to pick up.
Fair.
But that's a discipline that has to happen.
Right.
And sometimes I do it well, sometimes I don't do it well.
Okay. All right. As you're going through life, this is something that I experience on a regular basis, and most people have these things, like, you're doing your job and someone just says something, whether it's directly to you or about your area of expertise, you're just like, really? That's really dumb or just annoying. Like, what's something that, like, is a pet peeve, or, like, you wish more people knew or more educated about what you do, that you wish people would stop, like, associating with it or doing because of it or whatever?
I need to think about that for a second.
Okay.
Generally speaking, when I share what I do with friends, whether it's a church or other places, neighbors, or even here sometimes, I kind of wish that they would ask me more questions.
Okay.
To allow me to explain the job more. I have kind of a pat answer, which a lot of times people don't go to the next step and ask the next question.
Right.
So that kind of irritates me, but I'm not going to.
You came to the right show.
Yeah, exactly. I've appreciated all your questions. Thank you.
Good.
They've been great questions and been thoughtful for me to kind of get my brain.
I try and get those.
Yeah.
I try really hard to get those.
Well, you've done a great job, Joel. So that's part of it. I guess that's a frustration that I have, is that I wish that people would dig a little bit deeper.
Interesting.
I have a friend whose name happens to be John also, who is one of those that does dig deeper. When I next see him and I tell him about that I was up here doing something this weekend, he will have 5 more questions to dig deeper to learn about the experience. So I think that's probably one of my pet peeves about what I do, is that not enough, when I talk to people about it, I wish they could learn more about it by asking more questions instead of me just dumping on them.
You're like, I'm an ambassador. I'm outside sales. Okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, moving right along. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So that would be, I'm not sure that gets to the core of your question.
No, I think that's perfect. Yeah. Like, you just ask more questions.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I'm very curious about this one because it's you have a unique position. So one of my my favorite questions, I'm going to do these a little out of order, is it's called the magic snap. So imagine for a moment this like genie with no strings attached style thing. Magic can flow however you want. You snap and you are in the exact spot that you want to be in with the setup you'd want, with whatever, however you want to see what you're doing. Like, what would you want that to look like?
As it relates to my current job
Yeah.
as camp ambassador.
Or it doesn't necessarily have to be your current job. It could just be what you want to do. So it might be with some other company, or might be...
Let's do it in the context of camp.
Okay.
Because I live an hour away from here,
Okay.
I'm not up at the camp when groups are here all the time.
Right.
During the summer, generally speaking, I'll have the chance to connect with camps that are here because they're here for longer periods.
They're usually weeks.
The magic snap for me would be that I could snap my finger and the genie would transport me from where I live now off the hill to up here on a Saturday morning when the groups are here, so I can have breakfast with them.
So maybe just like a door portal that like walks
Yes.
you through. Like,
if you
into
can
the
help me
dino.
find one of those door portals that I can just walk through, drops me off here at camp, because then I could go back through the portal and be back at home.
Right.
Because I have responsibilities at home. I have a wife and a mother-in-law that lives with us that I have responsibilities for. Oh, and did I tell you I have a dog?
No, you
I have
actually
a
haven't
dog.
mentioned that.
I have a dog. So that I have responsibilities for.
Yeah.
So if you could help me with that magic snap,
you would fix the commute.
I would fix the commute.
Interesting.
It would be instantaneous.
Yeah.
Because the part of the job I love the most is an hour away from me.
Right. Right.
And the part of the job I love the most is being with the guests
Right.
on the camp.
Yeah. I like when the answer to that isn't like an overhaul of a bunch of stuff, which I like those answers because it's very imaginative what people like. Yeah, like, because for me, I would love to have like this big studio that actually have like big professional grade stuff that like, people come to, have comfortable places to sit and all this fun stuff. But like when they're like, I'm pretty happy with what I have. Just fix this little stupid little
That
inconvenience.
magic portal, if you could just give me that
and
snap
it's like,
magic
for
portal.
you, it's just
Very simple.
Yeah,
Very
yeah,
simple.
I like that. If somebody is listening to this and realizing like, wow, John, you really opened my eyes. I want to go into sales. Any advice for them just starting off?
Pick something that you love yourself, use yourself, and value, because then you will be able to communicate passionately the value of that product in your own life.
Yeah.
And when you can do that, it makes the education experience of sales so much easier by explaining to someone, this is why I use it. This
Right.
is how helpful it is to me.
Right.
And actually, in the context of camp, what I do here, I've been to a number of camps. When I went to camps as a young family, that's when I started to fall in love with camps. And it was that experience that I had where I came to love Christian camping. And I'm able to communicate that love to other people.
When you have that personal experience,
Yeah.
it's easier
Yes.
to sell a
Yes.
product.
Yeah.
Okay. If you were able to step back in time for just a minute and give yourself advice, and you can choose where in your life this advice would come in, what advice would you give yourself? You have this short window. What do you say to yourself?
I probably should have been more aggressive at moving ahead into other sales opportunities outside of the company I was with.
Okay.
Now, in hindsight, having been there 33 years, it was an awesome place to work. I learned an incredible amount of things.
Yeah.
I created revenue for myself.
Right.
And that still creates revenue for me today. But could I have? I had a couple of opportunities while I was at this company to have left, and I chose to stay. Would it have been better to have left? I don't know.
So
might
maybe
have
you
been.
like look into those other opportunities a little bit more.
Say that. I asked that again.
I said, so you mean like telling yourself maybe look into those
Yes,
opportunities
yes.
and come up a little bit more.
Yes.
Not necessarily go chase them, but like see what they actually had in store.
The brother that I told you worked at the same company when I started, he left and went into residential and commercial real estate
Okay.
and became extremely successful.
Yeah, real estate is a
And has consequently parlayed that into another real estate position that
Wow.
he has.
Okay.
And so sometimes I think, should I have done that? But so that's the only question that I have.
Interesting.
But also in hindsight, no, not in hindsight, current sight, present sight, today's sight, I'm very grateful for what I experienced.
Right.
Because
Okay.
it also parlayed me into the opportunity to retire from that job
Mm-hmm.
and make myself available to do something I always wanted to do, which was work at a Christian camp.
Cool.
And so if I had done something else, would that have given me this opportunity? I don't know. Who knows?
Going into quantum physics there.
Yes, exactly. Right. Exactly.
Okay. All right. But I like that. So as we're wrapping up, is there anything that I missed that maybe I didn't go into enough, or that you're like, we didn't finish that thought because Joel interrupted me and went off on something else? Anything like that?
Just that the current job I have is a ministry experience, is the way I look at it, an opportunity to connect churches, schools, other organizations to a place where they can experience God's creation and hopefully be in an environment where they're listening to and hearing about our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. That's really what motivates me to be involved in Christian camping.
Okay.
Is that I experienced that as a young person and then as an adult going to a Christian camp, and now I have the chance to be on the other side of that to help other people have that opportunity.
Yeah.
So that'd be kind of my closing thought, is the joy that I've been given to be able to be involved in Christian camp.
You want to share that with other people?
Yeah.
Okay. If people want to find you and like follow what you do, where can they do that?
Well, probably the best thing to do is to go to our camp website, ottawapines.org, and look under, I think it's About, and you'll see my cheery face there. You can contact me through the camp. I'd love to talk to you if anybody is interested in following up on what it's like to be a camp ambassador, a little more depth, or even to come up and spend some time walking the camp with me. I can share the joy of what it's like.
Yeah, and if you find him through this podcast, let him know, like, hey, I've heard Joel talk about all he does at this camp, and that way he can know like where you heard about.
I would love to have any of the listeners to the podcast
awesome.
Come up or connect with me through the camp.
Well, John, thank you so much for being on here. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Joel, it's been really fun. I've enjoyed it immensely. Thank you.
I'm glad I was able to ask you some questions that you've been dying for people to ask you. So,
exactly. Well done.
It's a win-win.
Exactly.
So everyone listening, thank you so much for listening. I appreciate every one of you. If you've liked what you've heard, please just go leave a rating and review it. Say some good things that helps other people find out. Kind of like John was talking about, sharing what you've enjoyed with other people. I would really appreciate it. As always, a big thank you to Milana Dodd for my cover art. She did an amazing job. She's an amazing graphic designer. You can check her out on her website at milanadodd.com, and you can also find her Instagram. I'll have those linked in the description below. Braden Slens is going to be releasing a new Zero Credits and Counting from his Coaster Gnome YouTube channel shortly. I believe this is the one that I'm on, so go check that out. I'll have a link to his channel in the description below. I think that's it. It's pretty light on announcements today. Thank you all so much for listening, and I'll catch you all on the next episode.